T8.10. At a baseball game, 42 of 65 randomly selected people own an iPod. At a rock concert occurring at the same time across town, 34 of 52 randomly selected people own an iPod. Okay, so let's make notes here. So N1, it's the baseball game, 65. P hat 1 is 42 out of 65, or 0.646. Okay. N2, that's the rock concert, is 52. P hat 2 is 34 out of 52, which is 0.654. All right, a 90% confidence interval for the difference, game minus concert, in population proportions is negative 0.154 to positive 0.138. Okay. So 90%, that would imply a critical value of 1.645. Okay, so z-score 1.645. Okay. All right, which of the following gives the correct outcome of the researcher's test of the claim? Okay, so the interval contains both negative and positive values, meaning that somewhere in this interval, the value 0 is also included. Okay, so this means that it's plausible that the proportion of people at the game who own an iPod is less than at the concert. It's also plausible that the proportion of people at the game who own an iPod is greater than those at the concert, right? And of course, because 0 is a value in this interval, it's also plausible that there's no difference. Okay? So in other words, this interval gives some evidence of everything, right? It gives some evidence that the proportion of people at the game who own iPods is lower. It gives some evidence that the proportion of people at the game who own iPods is higher, and it also gives some evidence that the proportion is the same. So it doesn't give convincing evidence of anything. Okay. All right, let's read some of the answer choices. So let's just make this note. Because the interval goes from negative to positive, it means no convincing evidence of a difference. All right, choice A. Because the interval includes 0, the researcher can conclude that the proportion of iPod owners at the two venues is the same. Now, I don't know if we would conclude that they're the same, right? Because it's still plausible that one group might be higher or lower than the other. Okay, so there's no convincing evidence of anything. All right, B. Because the center of the interval is negative 0.008, the researcher can conclude that a higher proportion of people at the rock concert own iPads than at the baseball game. Okay, so we don't make a decision based on the point estimate, we make a decision based on the entire interval. Okay, so I already don't like A and B. Okay, C. Because the interval includes 0, the researcher cannot conclude that the proportion of iPod owners at the two venues is different. Yeah, that's right. It's plausible that they're the same. So yeah, C seems like it's going to be the correct answer. D. Because the interval includes negative 0.008, the researcher cannot conclude that the proportion of iPod owners at the two venues is different. Again, we don't use a single value to make a conclusion. We use the entire interval to make a conclusion, so not D. E. Because the interval includes more negative than positive values, the researcher can conclude that a higher proportion of people at the rock concert own iPods than at the baseball game. Well, yeah, so there's some evidence of that, but it's not convincing evidence, so we still wouldn't make that conclusion. Okay. To have convincing evidence of anything, right, you'd need the whole interval to be positive numbers, or you'd need the whole interval to be negative numbers. Okay. That's how you have convincing evidence. Okay, when you have a little bit of both, positive and negative, it's some evidence, but it's just not convincing evidence. All right, so we're going to go with C here as the correct answer.